Hello and welcome to the newscast. I'm Daniel Chen. Let's start with the headlines. Asia's first and the world's third Google campus opened in Seoul today with one-on-one mentoring, exchange programs, workshops, and customized training. It's set to give Korean startups a tremendous boost. And the two Koreas have tentatively agreed to joint events to mark the 15th anniversary of a historic inter-Korean summit and the 70th anniversary of Korea's liberation from Japan's colonial rule, possibly a small step towards improving inter-Korean ties. It looks like Prime Minister David Cameron's Conservatives are on course to win the British general election and govern the United Kingdom for another 5 years after an unexpectedly strong showing. Our first story of the day, Google opened its third startup hub, the first in Asia, in Seoul earlier today. Our Choi You-sun tells us more about the dream campus that's expected to upgrade Korea's startup ecosystem and help local ventures expand into the global market.
Campus Seoul will house 8 startups and offer one-on-one mentoring, as well as exchange programs with other startup hubs around the world. Mothers wanting to start ventures will also be able to access customized training. These opportunities are expected to create more jobs and help fledgling Korean businesses become global players. Similar programs have already showed promise on the London campus. It opened in March of 2012 and since then has generated over 1,000 jobs and nearly 300 investment deals totaling $60 million. Later the same year, Google added the Tel Aviv campus in Israel, an effort to plug into the country's growing startup scene. The Seoul campus is a welcome addition for President Park Geun-hye, who vowed to make Korea a dynamic global startup hub. As part of our creative economy drive, innovation centers are opening all over the country.
기술 창업, 글로벌 창업, 지역 기반 창업을 적극 유도하고 정부 지원 사업도 시장 친화적이고 글로벌 지향적으로 개선을 해서 민간 주도의 벤처 창업계가 생태계가 더욱 건강하게 성장할 수 있도록 뒷받침하겠습니다.
Google's head of Asia-Pacific operations agreed with President Park, saying that sustainable growth is only possible by expanding innovation. The Seoul campus also plans to collaborate with startup support hubs run by Korea's private sector, like the Asan Nanum Foundation's Maru 180 Center. The president visited that location after the Google opening ceremony, meeting with entrepreneurs and venture capital representatives there and listening to their successes and challenges. Choi You-sun, Arirang News.
Korea's tech giant keeps on investing, this time to beef up its display panel division. Samsung Display has vowed to spend over $3 billion on investment following the unveiling of a new semiconductor factory just yesterday. With the details, here's our Shin Se-min.
Its bold investment move by Samsung Group's IT-related companies, considering the sharp decline in parent company Samsung Electronics' profits last year. Samsung Display said Friday that it will pump roughly $3.6 billion into its facilities, aiming to boost production of flexible displays. The money may go into Asan production line, responsible for turning out flexible organic light-emitting diodes, or the OLED panels for Samsung's new Galaxy S6 Edge. This investment is a follow-up to last year's financing, also over $3.6 billion. Just this Thursday, Samsung Electronics unveiled its plan to build a new memory chip factory in Pyeongtaek at a cost of $14.5 billion. And Samsung SDI spent over $420 million on increasing its facilities last year, with more expected this year. This continuous flow of investment is seen as a move to solidify the company's growth sources, building up the memory chip and display panel sectors, and eventually lifting the dependency on smartphone sales, which generated more than half of the revenue last year. Samsung Display has already upped capacity at its LCD production line in Suzhou, China, and received an approval from the Vietnamese government for a $1 billion project to build a new display factory in the country. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
And now let's zoom in on the latest on the Seongwanjeong graft scandal. Prosecutors are questioning Hong Joonhee, governor of Gyeongsangnam-do province. Hong, a former prosecutor himself, is the first of the 8 political heavyweights listed on Sang's suicide note to be summoned. The investigators have already grilled Yoon Seung-mo, former vice president of Sang's firm Gyeongnam Enterprises. Yoon claims he personally delivered more than $90,000 to Hong in 2011 when he was running for chairman of the Grand National Party, the predecessor of the ruling Saenuri Party. The prosecutors believe Hong tried to destroy evidence, and the interrogation is expected to last all day. Former Prime Minister Lee Wan-gu, who was also named on Sang's note, resigned over the allegations and may face questioning next. Staying on politics, there's a widening gap in approval ratings for Korea's 2 main rival parties. According to a poll conducted by Gallup, support for the ruling Saenuri Party stood at 41%, up 1 percentage point from a week ago, while the New Politics Alliance for Democracy is at 24%, 2 percentage point drop. The gap is the biggest since Moon Jae-in became the NPAD's chairman in February. In a different poll by Realmeter earlier this week, Saenuri's chairman Kim Moo-sang's approval rating hit an all-time high of 19%, narrowing the gap with Moon, whose rating were at around 25%. These results follow the April 29th by-elections, which ended with the ruling Saenuri Party's sweeping victory over the opposition. More than a third of the South Korean firms at the Kaesong Industrial Complex have paid their North Korean workers March wages. An official at the Unification Ministry said Friday that the government will take necessary measures against the 49 companies after reviewing the details of the payments. In February, Pyongyang unilaterally hiked the wages for its workers, but Seoul says the issue must be settled through inter-Korean talks. The ministry official said at least 31 of the 49 companies did not apply North Korea's wage hike and did not sign a note promising to meet the North's demands at a later date. North Korea has threatened to attack South Korean warships without warning if they continue to cross over the Western Sea border. South Korea was quick to respond with stern words. Our Na Yeon-kyung has this report.
Pyongyang has accused South Korea of intruding on the Western Sea border, claiming that South Korean Navy speedboats staged a military provocation several times this month. North Korea's state-run Korean Central News Agency said Friday that the regime has issued what's called an emergency special warning. According to the KCNA, starting on Friday, the regime will strike without warning if South Korean Navy boats cross over the demarcation line in the West Sea. Seoul was quick to respond. Defense Ministry spokesman Kim Min-seok said it's actually the North who's creating unnecessary tensions in the West Sea, adding that if Pyongyang attacks, the South will make sure the North, quote, bitterly regrets its actions. He also warned that because the northern limit line is the only de facto maritime inter-Korean border, it should be respected and the Koreas should abide by it. North Korea does not acknowledge the NLL, which was drawn in 1953 at the end of the Korean War. The North has been insisting that the border should be drawn further south to equally divide the waters between the two Koreas. Experts say Friday's warning may not seem like a huge threat, but given that North Korea is never predictable, South Korea should remain alert and monitor the situation with caution. Na Yeon-kyung, Arirang News.
And now some promising news on inter-Korean ties. As the 70th anniversary of Korea's liberation from Japan approaches, there are some joint ceremonies on the horizon. Our Connie Kim has the details.
15 years ago, on June 15th, the two Koreas held a landmark summit with leaders from both sides meeting, but it hasn't been repeated since. However, on Friday, South Korean civilian groups and a North Korean preparation committee issued a statement saying they have agreed to hold a ceremony to celebrate the anniversary of the June 15th Inter-Korean Declaration. The ceremony will take place in Seoul. They also designated a joint commemoration period between June 15th and August 15th, which is Korea's National Liberation Day. During that time, they'll work on cooperative projects that will help the two Koreas move towards reunification. However, where and when these events will be held is up in the air. The two sides have also yet to agree on where the August liberation ceremony will be held. This push for joint celebrations come as the Korean government announced plans earlier this month to boost civilian exchange programs. Inter-Korean exchanges came to a standstill in 2010 when a North Korean torpedo attack on a South Korean warship led to strong sanctions against the North. The South Korean government still has to approve the joint events. Earlier this week, South Korea's Unification Ministry took the first step toward launching the June event by approving the South Korean civic group's request to meet with North Koreans in China. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
And we now go over to Britain's general election, where the Conservative Party is predicted to secure an outright victory, and the Labour Party and the Liberal Democrats seem set to face huge losses. The results are still coming in, but the BBC predicts the Conservative Party is well on course to win a majority victory in Parliament, winning 329 seats, enough to form a majority. David Cameron is scheduled to meet the Queen at 12:30 a.m. UK time and expected to make a victory statement to the public. The main opposition Labour Party, forecast to win 234 seats, lost a staggering number of seats in Scotland to the Scottish National Party, which has won 56 of the 59 seats up for grabs in the country. Britain's de facto third party, the Liberal Democrats, had a nightmare night that could see them losing dozens of seats. They currently have only 8 seats in Westminster. Results from across Britain are filtering through as we speak, but the final numbers are expected by Friday lunchtime in the UK, which will be late Friday evening here in Korea. Japan is seeking to list wartime industrial facilities where tens and thousands of Koreans were forced to labor as UNESCO World Heritage Sites. Japan has recently defended its bid, which Korea called a historic distortion. Our Kim Hyun-bin shows us how Japan is trying to justify its move.
Tokyo claims the 23 industrial sites, including coal mines, shipyards, and steel mills, laid the foundation for Japan's industrial development and rapid modernization between 1850 to 1910. Seoul has condemned the move, pointing out that 7 of the facilities used forced Korean labor during the Japanese colonial era starting in 1910. Tokyo defended its case, saying the sites should be honored for their contribution to the earlier era.
It's a different period of time, and historically it has nothing to do with the South Korean government's issues about forced labor.
However, South Korea's foreign ministry maintains there's a connection that can't be ignored. A ministry official said that 58,000 Koreans were forced to work at those 7 sites, and warned that Japan's bid could turn into another case of historic distortion if that record is overlooked. Experts say Japan's UNESCO bid is fueling diplomatic tensions between the Asian neighbors, especially after Prime Minister Abe's recent trip to the U.S. South Korean officials plan to meet their Japanese counterparts this month to negotiate revisions to Tokyo's application. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
And staying on the topic of Japan's efforts to register its 19th century industrial facilities as World Heritage Sites, we turn to a third party's perspective. Our Hwang Sung-hee sat down with Michael Green, Japan Chair for the Center for Strategic and International Studies. She started by asking his views on Tokyo's controversial bid.
No historical site is pure. I mean, there's always some negative aspect to human history. And I think it would be better for the Japanese side to explain the important significance of these sites in terms of development and, frankly, a development model that much of the rest of Asia copied, while at the same time acknowledging that there was human suffering involved as well.
In a recent interview, you assessed Abe's recent comments positively. Can you elaborate on that?
By acknowledging that Japan, that these women were trafficked, from a U.S. perspective, this is a strong or stronger addressing of the fact that the Japanese people and the Japanese government have some accountability. From an American's perspective, in the country where this word trafficking was developed as a matter of international law, what the Prime Minister said is a step forward. It's not a huge step forward, but it's considered a step forward.
So you don't think that Prime Minister Abe has to necessarily say that the Japanese government was responsible for this human trafficking when he uses the word trafficking?
No, I don't think that the Japanese government's official stance on the comfort women issue is adequate. However, I think there's a view in the U.S., and I certainly have the view, that it has moved in a better direction. Although I should quickly add that on this question of comfort women, Japan has no support in terms of the history. 190 historians in the U.S. signed a letter describing what they thought happened. And I think that's the mainstream view among scholars and experts.
Considering that Abe also needs to satisfy his conservative domestic supporters, do you think it's possible, how likely is it for Korea and Japan to resolve this historical dispute while Abe is in power?
An apology seems very political, and I think a hard target to achieve under the current Japan-Korea relationship. But I think there is room in the next statements in the upcoming anniversaries to get more. And that will require not freezing high-level dialogue until there's a resolution. And since President Park and Prime Minister Abe are not talking directly, there has to be someone very close to each of them who's brave, politically strong, who works on this issue bilaterally.
That's all the time we have for today. Thank you, Dr. Green.
Thank you.
Shifting gears now, it's Parents' Day here in Korea, but with the country's changing family values, an increasing number of seniors are living alone in the capital city. The Seoul city government says that as of 2013, more than 250,000 people over the age of 65 were living solo. That's an increase of almost 100,000 people from 2007. Statistics Korea survey shows that more and more seniors are now choosing to live on their own because they feel more comfortable with it, and they don't want to be a burden to their children. More than half of respondents over the age of 60 in Seoul said they're not living with their children. After much controversy, the second Lotte World Tower is set to reopen its aquarium and movie theaters next Tuesday. The Seoul Metropolitan Government announced Friday that it has decided to lift its ban on the Lotte Mall after discussing with safety issues with experts and government officials. It's been nearly 5 months since Lotte came under fire over its structural safety following reports of water leaks and building vibrations. To ensure public safety, the city has ordered the Lotte World Tower to conduct thorough monthly checkups and publish the results on its official website. And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you so much for watching. We do have more coming up at 10 p.m. Korea time, so do join us then.